guys, welcome back to Falcon Central Radio on the Pro Football Central Radio Network. I am one of your hosts, Aaron Freeman. I am joined by my co-host, Scott Karasik. Today, we are welcoming on from 538, The Athletic and Lions Wire at USA Today, Ty Schalter. He's going to talk with us about this upcoming Week 3 game between the Falcons and Lions. And also on this episode, we will recap the Packers win, the win over the Packers. We'll talk and answer some of you guys' mailbag questions throughout the show and at the end of the show. So welcome, Ty, back to the show. We had you on, I think, back when the Falcons played the Lions in the London game, if I recall. It was a while ago.
Yeah, I believe that's right. It has been a while.
Yeah, so...
Too long.
Yeah.
Too long.
So, and that particular game was a very dark time to be a Falcon fan. And it seems like we've sort of come out of that for the better in the long run. So I feel pretty comfortable at this point.
Yeah, that was the turning point for the Lions too. I believe that was, I can't remember if that was the first half week with Jim Bob Cooter, or it was coming back after that. But that was the turning point for Detroit also, and sort of since that week forward, Matthew Stafford's statistics is if you want to cherry pick some Matthew Stafford is better now statistics, that's the stretch of time you want to go with.
I think he is better, and so the stats have definitely reflected that. He's. I thought for a time when Schwartz was the coach that Stafford was one of the more overrated quarterbacks in the league, just because he was throwing for 5,000 yards. Basically, he would just drop back and throw it up to Calvin Johnson, and he would basically, for lack of a better term, stat pad a little bit, and wasn't necessarily the consistent quarterback that you would want. But I think since then he's really sort of blossomed into a legitimate quarterback that you can certainly consider to be one of the top 10 quarterbacks in the league.
Yeah, I'd agree, and it's funny that you say that. And I didn't know if this is the first thing you want to hit, but it's really been. It was funny listening to John Gruden last night on Monday Night Football talk about how this is the advantage Stafford has. The improvisation, the different arm angles, altering his mechanics. Throwing around guys so the balls don't get batted. Those sorts of things. But it was really those sorts of things that doomed him over and over again in the early years as a quarterback, because he was so improvisational and sometimes just not getting the details right, being sloppy with the mechanics. It's one thing when you're under pressure, you jump out of the way, you see a guy, but you got to you sidearm around the guy, and you complete the pass. You put it on his hands, and you extend the drive. When you miss a wide open guy by 3 feet doing that, and you kill the drive, that's not so great. Then it's how about you just throw it normal, Matthew, and put it on the dude's hands. Yeah. But yeah, you're absolutely right. And I talked to Eric Ebron last year on Sirius XM, and he said that was really when he got his offensive coordinator fired, there was a huge change in Matthew Stafford and his approach. The time he put in. Not like he wasn't putting in the time before, not like he was slacking before, but it's just total visible attitude change in, I have to do this now. I have to be the guy that's putting in the most time. I have to make sure I'm always getting it exactly right. I have to be setting the bar for everybody else. And he said it's just been incredibly visible that his approach has changed and the results have changed with it.
Absolutely. Let's get into this show, and let's talk a little bit. Scott, we normally start the show talking about roster moves, if the Falcons have made any. Last second, I looked at it and said, the Falcons made a practice squad move. They re-signed Tiny Tupu, cut Jarrell Presley. I'm assuming, Scott, you think this is a move to shore up their D-tackle depth because of Courtney Upshaw being out with the ankle injury, right?
Yeah, you just need someone who can come in and practice, because Upshaw ain't practicing for probably 2 weeks, maybe 3. All you can do. It's kind of nice the Falcons actually do have that early bye because of those injuries to Upshaw and Schrader and Beasley.
Yeah. All right, let's get into this Week 2 Packers game. Pretty exciting game, Sunday night game, opening game in Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Falcons offense getting back on track, looking like the team that they not necessarily left off the 2016 season, but looked like for most of the 2016 season, winning that game 34-23. They were up 24-7 at halftime, extended that to 31-7. Sort of could coast a little bit in the second half. Some of the key stats from that game: the Falcons' running game got back on track after a very lackluster performance in Week 1 against the Bears. They rushed for 141 yards against the Packers. They increased their play-action passing, became a little bit more aggressive on offense. 22% of their first half passes were play-action passes, which was more in line with the offense that we saw last year when they led the NFL, with 27% of their passes being play-action. And we saw the stats reflecting that, where their yards per attempt was about 15 yards per attempt off of play action in that first half. We saw the offense go 3 for 3 in the red zone, which is always important every time you get down there to be able to put points on the board. After the Packers had shut out the Seahawks in the red zone the week before, so that was a positive step. And the Falcons had a plus turnover margin. They were +2 on turnover margin. Those 2 turnovers directly contributed to 14 points, including a fumble recovery touchdown by Desmond Trufant. He had an interception that the Falcons were quickly able to turn into points as well. So certainly an all-around strong performance. Ty, I'm curious, did you check out that game, and what were your thoughts watching that Falcons-Packers game?
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't watch every single second, but I watched a good chunk of it. And obviously what you said, it's funny because I said coming into the season, I felt like, last year with Kyle Shanahan catalyzing that offense, and what Dan Quinn was doing with the defense and the young talent that he brought on board, that this is a team in transition from having a dominant offense and a defense that's, plucky and makes plays here and there, to, whether it's next year or the year after, a dominant defense, a defense-first team, and an offense that is still going to be able to make plays. And my big question was, what are we going to see this year? Is it going to be both at the same time? Are we going to get, like when they fired Tony Dungy and brought on John Gruden, and suddenly the Buccaneers could score, but it was still pretty much Tony Dungy's defense? Is that what we're going to get this year? And that's certainly what it looked like against the Packers. The explosiveness on defense, the ability to make plays, hassle Aaron Rodgers, disrupt Aaron Rodgers, hit Aaron Rodgers. And the Packers don't have a ton of weapons that are going to dominate and get open and make something out of nothing over and over and over. So if Aaron Rodgers is running for his life on every single play, you're going to be able to keep them from scoring, at least slow them down. And obviously the offense was able to do what it did. The defense was able to get turnovers and get points off those turnovers. So, nothing that you could, poke holes in. Just an excellent performance against a dangerous team. Of course, obviously, and I said on Twitter, I was feeling punchy a little bit, but when the Packers scored and kind of got back in it, I was like, oh, here it comes. Not necessarily the collapse, but more of the Aaron Rodgers magic. Are we going to see it? But we didn't, and they were able to shut that down. And it was a really impressive win by the Falcons.
Aaron Rodgers is a very good quarterback, but on the road, he's not nearly as good as he is at home. And I think that says a lot about the kind of quarterback that he is. I like him. He's one of the top 5 of all time, and you can make that argument. But on the road, I don't think he's that guy.
I mean, in spots, yeah. And again, if you look at the same thing, the Aaron Rodgers we saw for the first 8 weeks of 2016 is not the magical Yoda god we saw in the last, 4 weeks of the regular season and the playoffs. He has, just like every player, he has different gears. He has different levels. You're not getting, Aaron Rodgers against the Giants, Aaron Rodgers against the Cowboys in the playoffs every single week. Nobody can hit that level of performance that consistently. You're right, and just like a lot of great quarterbacks, if you're consistently getting hits on him, getting pressure on him, forcing him to run and make plays, and then when you get him in that schoolyard mode, and Randall Cobb isn't open, there's no Jordy Nelson behind the defense. There's nobody to go to. Well, the results are going to speak for themselves.
Definitely. Yeah, it's when you talk about quarterbacks, we often like to pretend that this quarterback sort of single-handedly can sort of just win games on their own. But you look throughout the league and you look at even the elite guys like Tom Brady, who's arguably the greatest quarterback to ever play. Aaron Rodgers certainly is going to be a Hall of Famer throughout his career. Drew Brees is certainly going to be a Hall of Famer. We see it with Peyton Manning, and all down the list, down all the way down to the Jared Goffs of the world and the Blaine Gabberts and whatnot, where it really boils down to what your supporting cast is. Obviously, the better the quarterback is, the less it's required to have a great supporting cast. But, it's not. I don't think it's a coincidence that the one year that the Packers went to the Super Bowl under Aaron Rodgers, they also had the second best defense in the league that year behind the Pittsburgh Steelers, who they played in the Super Bowl. And I think really the thing that's really hurt Aaron Rodgers throughout his career more so than the weapons he's had. I think Drew Brees can certainly claim this is the case where, and I think even Matt Ryan and certainly Stafford at various points as well, they just really haven't played with good defenses that can help them win games. And it's really just, it puts so much pressure on them to have to single-handedly win the game each and every week. And, sometimes they're capable of doing that and other times they're not. And it winds up you having situations like it was on Sunday night where I don't necessarily think Green Bay played poorly, but it was very clear that, a couple of things didn't go their way. They had a couple of big plays, a touchdown, and another big play wiped out because of offensive pass interference penalties. Obviously, the Falcons started off fresh. They just really can't hang with an offense like the Falcons, and it really sort of put them in a bad spot. But, I'm a Falcon fan, so I'm not going to complain too much about that. If Green Bay wants to sit and cook with their bad defense, then that's more power to them. We'll just look forward to taking advantage of that come January. So,
as a Lions fan, I'm not complaining.
Yeah.
You can hang L's on the Packers every week.
Definitely. So, what were some other things that stood out to you, Scott, in that Packers game? Were there any sort of particular individual players that you thought sort of stood out or didn't stand out?
I mean, not really an individual player, just the overall pass rush as a team. You were seeing Poe and Jarrett just blow up the inside almost every play, and it was helping the edge rush get there. So I know a lot of people are saying, Beasley's the reason for the pass rush, Beasley's the reason for the pass rush. But if you got Poe in there eating a double team or Jarrett in there eating a double team, it makes those guys' job on the outside easier. We saw Zach McKinley coming around just destroying their left tackle. And when you've got that pass rush, when you've got those interior guys making those moves, I mean, what can you do? What can you do when you're the offense? It's really tough. So I think that pass rush, just as a whole, that's what impressed me. Hitting Aaron Rodgers 7 times, sacking him 3, forcing that big play, watching Vic Beasley almost knock his helmet off. So that was beautiful.
I don't know if you guys saw. Did you see the meme? Because there's the old Lions fans have circulated this old meme of Matthew Stafford. Nice. It's 4 pictures. Nice lead you got there. Be a shame if someone made a comeback. And so then they took it with the pic of Rodgers just after that play, staring at the camera. It's like, oh, it's a nice lead you got there. It'd be a shame if someone, and then it's just a pic of him with Beasley, and it's so that was and it's funny too because both Patriots fans in week 1 and Packers fans in week 2 have been it's been interesting seeing them go through emotions of watching the whole league, 31 other fan bases cheer to see their quarterback have a rough game, have a rough go of it, and take a hard L. Everybody was, throwing confetti over the Patriots taking it on the chin at home in week 1. And there's a lot of teams that loved seeing Aaron Rodgers get taken down a peg, at least for 1 week against the Falcons.
Definitely. We got a couple of mailbag questions about this game specifically. The first one comes from Evan Birchfield. He asks, any thoughts on how the play calling was handled in the second half? Some fans were complaining about the prevent/conservative play calling.
I mean, I'm not too worried about the way the defense kind of just backed off a little bit. I would have called cover 4 the entire second half myself. You're up 24 points. Keep everything in front of you. Let them get those long completion or the short completions. If you try and keep it within 10 yards, you're good to go.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think offensively they were playing let's milk clock, and I think they did an effective job doing it. And given how last season ended, I don't think anybody's going to complain too much about that, of them deciding to run the ball quite a bit in the second half. I think defensively, I don't think it was really the conservative play calling that allowed Green Bay to get back into the game. I think it's because Green Bay's offense is good. And even, the Falcons defense has certainly made strides, but I don't think it's quite at the level where you can expect them to be able to shut down Green Bay's offense for more than maybe 2 quarters in a game. I also think, it was less about, we played, I don't think it was prevent defense. They were certainly playing off coverage on a couple of those drives in the second half, as opposed to their normal sort of aggressive press man coverage. But I think it was a lot more had to do with sort of guys being out of position, mental errors, and missed tackles more so than, we're playing too soft and we're just letting Green Bay sort of dink and dunk their way down the field. They were dinking and dunking their way down the field quite a bit, but that was how they were playing the entire game. That wasn't necessarily because the Falcons changed their defensive styles in the second half. And, they played a little bit more aggressive in that second series in the third quarter that ended the third quarter and began the fourth quarter, and the Packers still scored on that series. So it wasn't as if if they had just pressed at the line of scrimmage, the Packers wouldn't have been able to score 15 or 16 or however many second half points. It was one of those things where you're not going to be able to shut down the Packers offense for 4 quarters, or at least the Falcons defense isn't quite at that level. Our next question comes from Bruce Luan at Big Boy Brewski on Twitter. He asks, what players stood out on offense and defense against the Packers?
I gave my defensive one. I'll give an offensive one this time. Mohamed Sanu really just had a good game. I'm obviously going to take out the normal names like the Julio Jones, the Devontae Freemans. They did what they were supposed to do. But just the way that Sanu on third down multiple times scored, not scored, but got that first down that was needed, it was amazing. It was absolutely needed, and it basically showed why he was worth that $7 million contract, was because he could come in and get those 20-yard plays on third down when it was 3rd and 16. He did it twice, I want to say, on 3rd and 10. Where he got 21 yards.
Yeah, for me, I probably would have picked Sanu on offense, but I'll pick someone differently. I'll pick Alex Mack. I thought Alex Mack looked more like the Alex Mack we saw regularly last year. I know he got a high Pro Football Focus grade in Week 1. I didn't think he looked quite up to his normal par against the Bears. Old man offensive line knowing about it. And, at least based off of Week 2's results, I would say not quite yet. And that may be a little bit of a ways off. So that was good, at least from my perspective, for him to have a little bit of a bounce back game. Defensively, I would say, Trufant's probably the obvious choice just because he had the 2 turnovers. Yeah, I'll just go with Trufant. It's good for Desmond Trufant to have big games in prime time because he's one of those underrated. He's one of the, arguably one of the 5 or 4 best cornerbacks in the league, and he doesn't often get that sort of consideration. And so if he can have some of these big performances in prime time, it'll certainly help raise his profile on a national level. He's similar to someone I'm sure Ty is very familiar with, Darius Slay, who's one of the more underrated cornerbacks in the league. and doesn't quite get as much pub as he probably should. Okay, let's. Next question comes from Evan Birchfield. He says maybe a new segment called Brother of the Week, but pick a player who did the most for the team but isn't getting the headlines.
If I was going to do that this week, it'd be Dantare Poe. He was eating double teams. He was taking up the center of the guard right up the middle and creating the penetration needed inside to force Aaron Rodgers to get out of the pocket. Between him and Grady Jarrett, I mean, they may not have reported any stats, but without their games, there's no way Atlanta wins.
Okay. This guy's probably getting headlines, so this technically won't count. But I think Steve Sarkisian, if we're going who did the most for the team this week, I think him coming with his game plan, being more aggressive, looking more like the 2016 Falcons offense than whatever that was in week 1 against the Bears, which was a pretty vanilla sort of conservative game plan. I think going back to more play action, getting Julio involved, trying to mix up your route combinations to sort of exploit some weaknesses, going after Green Bay's nitro package on a couple of plays, and taking allowing Matt Ryan to take some shots down the field by having your receivers run more than 12 yards down the field. I think all figured into the Falcons offense getting back on track and looking like the team that we so often saw last season. And so he's the brother of the week for me. He did the most for the team. He's the big reason why the team's output went up like it did this past weekend. If he is getting a lot, then let's get him some more because he deserves it. All right, let's get Ty back into the. Hopefully, we won't get this thing ended in a tie. So someone's going to lose this weekend. Let's start off sort of with the injuries. I would imagine the big injury for the Lions, and Ty, maybe you can weigh in on sort of how serious you think this is Jared Davis left the game on Monday night against the Giants with a concussion. Presumably, he's in the protocol, so that puts his status up for this weekend. How big a loss is that potentially for this Lions defense?
It's tough to quantify. Really, this game against the Giants last night was the first time we really saw Davis as a big playmaker, as an impact guy. In preseason, he was out there, didn't have as many reps as maybe you'd like for a guy who you knew was going to come in and cover all the defensive snaps as a rookie. He's treated like a starter. And then in the first week, he was really excited to be out there. Did a lot of jumping on piles. I think he got 9 tackles, but, very much passive, very much second, third guy there, very much 5 yards down the field kind of a thing. And I went, okay, the athleticism is there, the want to is there, but he's a guy that's going to need, 5, 6, 7 weeks to really be comfortable and confident, be on the front foot and come in attacking the line of scrimmage. And then we saw that all night against the Giants. I think he had the highest PFF grade, one of the highest linebacker grades coming out of this week. It's like 87 something. And I think he deserved it. He had a big sack. It was a weird moment because John Gruden literally right before the snap goes, let's see if this guy can make a play, and circles him, and literally he comes up on a blitz, works his way through the trash, comes up and sacks Manning for his first career sack. Okay, all right, pretty cool. But then not long after that, he goes out with concussion, and like you said, he's in the protocol. We don't know more. He'll have to go through that process. It'll be up in the air, and it's kind of back to status quo for the linebacker position, where you're probably going to end up in the middle of the game. They put back Tahir Whitehead, who was last year's middle linebacker, out there. And we saw every Falcons fan favorite, Paul Warlow, come out and get burned on some coverages. It's something where I think you're going to want to see. Well, and this is the other thing that limited the Lions last year, when they basically only had 2 linebackers they trusted. They played a lot of big nickel with then rookie safety Miles Kilbrew. Well, Devon Wilson had first an awful game and then got hurt on Monday night. And so they went, okay, well, we've only got 2 starting caliber safeties. We have to go to 3 linebackers. Warlow was out there and, was more or less a liability, as everyone expected. So it's potentially a big loss, especially when you're talking against matching up. Some of the tertiary Falcons weapons, not so much Jones and Sanu, but when you start looking at, Taylor Gabriel and Austin Hooper and some of these guys that can do damage over the middle of the field, that was the huge hole for the Lions defense. So if Davis doesn't play, experience or no, coverage or no, the Lions did get burned for a tight end touchdown, which is the bane of their existence last year, again on Monday night. So regardless, that was the huge hole in the Lions defense, and that's something that's very scary if he's not in there, adding his ability and just his athleticism.
Okay, yeah, that's certainly an area of the Lions roster that is a weakness. Even if Davis was fully healthy, I would expect the Falcons to really try to attack that using Tevin Coleman, Devontae Freeman. They like to move those guys around the formation a lot, create some mismatches, and exploit them when they're there. And with Davis not being out, and them being forced to either play Jalen Reeves-Maybin or Paul Warlow quite a bit at that spot, and also you mentioned Tavon Wilson, and so then now they're forced to sort of get Miles Killebrew a lot more involved, which I don't think is necessarily a bad thing, since he's shown some flashes of potential and whatnot. But it could get pretty ugly there if the Falcons really do find a way to sort of attack that weakness. And one of the things I do expect the Falcons to do is try to get the Lions into their base defense quite a bit so that they do see Warlow out there. I noticed at the end of the game when Davis went out, the Lions were playing nickel, and they definitely didn't have Warlow in there, even though technically I guess he's higher on the depth chart than Reeves-Maybin is. But I think the Lions realize that definitely could be a problem where situations this Sunday where Paul Warlow might be matched up against Tevin Coleman. That's just a touchdown right there. So we'll see how the Lions sort of deal with it. I think they'll play a lot of zone. I think they'll hope that Ziggy Ansah can sort of take advantage of the Falcons' own injury on the offensive line. Ryan Schrader is also dealing with a concussion. His status for this Sunday. Last time the Lions played the Falcons, Ziggy Ansah did an outstanding job basically welcoming Jake Matthews to the NFL by absolutely destroying him. Jake was injured that game, but when I think about some of the rougher games that Jake Matthews had as a rookie season, that Lions game is one of the first ones that pops into my head because what Ziggy did to him. He's really the type of pass rusher that has historically given Jake a lot of problems with the speed, the length, and the power. If Schrader's out, I would imagine, I don't know how much the Lions do this, and maybe you can answer this question, Ty, but if the right tackle is out, I would imagine Ty Sambrailo, let's get Ziggy Ansah matched up against him every single snap so that Matt Ryan will have literally no time to ever throw the football, because there's no chance. There's absolutely no chance without a chip, without probably 3 chips for Ty Sambrailo to be able to stay in front of Ziggy Ansah. So do you think the Lions will try to counter the weakness they have at the linebacker position by trying to take advantage of a potential weakness that the Falcons have?
Yeah, absolutely. And, this defensive line with Ziggy Ansah being, a total unknown basically all summer long. He played through that injury all through the season, had 2 sacks in the wild card game, and then basically didn't get on a football field in a meaningful way until week 1. And, what's going on with this? And defensive line depth there was, even with Ansah, was a concern. Kerry Hyder Jr., people thought, it might be a one-year wonder, really flashed at the beginning of the year, and then tailed off, and then he got hurt, lost for the year before the season even started. They go to Anthony Zettel now as the starting left defensive end. But he's come along, and I said earlier, okay, the Lions are going to have to find a new Kerry Hyder, and he's kind of inching in that direction. But even so, there's not a lot of depth there. There's not a lot of people to rotate in. Guys like Cornelius Washington, are okay. But yeah, you're right. If they want to really take advantage of that matchup, they'll flex Ziggy around. I haven't seen a lot of that yet this season. They have done it with him in the past under previous schemes and alignments. But they definitely were mixing and matching interior and exterior guys around. You saw Haloti Ngata on a stunt come around off the backside and get Eli Manning last night, which was the first time we've seen that much athleticism from him in a long time. So we'll see. Jeremiah Ledbetter is a rookie. Coming out of Alabama, he had a really impressive preseason, and the first couple of games here in rotation quietly has made some push too. So I'll be curious to see how they, between inside and outside snap counts and flexing guys around. I don't know if they're going to put on that left side, but we'll see how they decide to attack that Falcons line.
Yeah, I think that's really the best chance the Lions have defensively. I think they have some good players. I'm looking forward to seeing the Julio versus Darius Slay matchup because I imagine they will use him to shadow him. I don't expect Slay to shut down Julio Jones, who does, but I do think he's one of those rare corners that at least on occasion you'll sit there and you'll be like, hey, they can go toe to toe. Like Slay can hold his own against Julio Jones. I still expect Julio to do his Julio things, but it'll be an interesting matchup because this is actually one of the better one-on-one matchups I think Julio will face all year long.
Totally agree, and I agree when you say toe-to-toe. There'll be plays where you go, whoo, like, yeah, Slay got it. Slay was all over that. He wasn't getting, and then there'll be times when Julio is just unstoppable. So I think there'll be some good plays in both directions. I think it'll be a matchup both players are really anticipating, and I think you're going to see some great football played by both.
Yeah.
I completely agree on that one. I think Julio ends up winning that particular matchup.
Yeah, there's very few opportunities.
Yeah, I think because that's really the trump card. Is not only does Julio have the speed, does he have the explosiveness, the body control, the length, the hands, whatever. But it's really just that size where ultimately he's just 20% bigger than the guy standing across from him. And, Slay's not small, but he just does not have that size. And Julio's going to be able to go up and get balls over Slay that, there's just nothing anybody can do. And, it doesn't matter who you put on him. Doesn't matter how many players you put on him. He's going to get his.
Yeah. But, I think that's one of the matchups that is intriguing, regardless of how it plays out. I think most of the other matchups go in the Falcons' favor. We talked about the linebackers being a weakness. You look at some of the other spots at that wide receiver position where the Lions have been playing Quandre Diggs in the slot. They've been playing DJ Hayden on the outside. DJ Hayden was a guy I laughed at every time I watched the Raiders game over the last 2 years. I'm like, oh, this guy's not good. It's a shame that the Raiders drafted him in the first round, so they feel compelled to have to play him. Now he's on the Lions. I don't get why the Lions feel compelled to play him. Maybe they don't have better options, but I don't think that bodes well for them this upcoming week because Diggs, while a good cornerback, I think he's very similar, in my opinion, to Brian Poole, the Falcons slot corner, in terms of his ability. But he's only 5'9", and the Falcons love putting Mohamed Sanu in the slot. And with that 6'2" frame and his ability, Sanu's not necessarily a guy that separates from coverage. He likes to box out guys. He's a power forward. He's the Dennis Rodman of this Falcons receiver core. And, I just think that's going to be a bad matchup for Quandre Diggs unless he can, suddenly grow 2 or 3 inches overnight or whatnot. And then if Hayden, or it doesn't really matter who the other corner is, I don't think Lions have anybody that can handle Gabriel's speed. So I think even if Slay does magically manage to sort of hold his own against Julio Jones, I do think those other two matchups are just not necessarily in the Lions' favor in the Falcons, even if they don't have to go.
Johnson Batamosi, who was mostly a special teams guy, but last year they started him against Des Bryant. So that's how much they've added depth, and that's how much they struggled, with injuries last year in the secondary. So the fact that they're trading away that guy as their 7th or 8th corner from having to start him against the Cowboys last year, there is a lot of talent in the secondary, and I think the safeties also. Glover Quinn has been consistently underrated by a lot of people. He's been making plays like crazy. Wilson, as we talked about, had a weirdly bad game against the Giants, then got hurt. I can't tell you right now his availability, what that looks like. Then Miles Killebrew. And again, you talk about a guy who can come up and play slot corner with somebody physical, who can fill a lot of different roles, play a little bit of that money backer role. He's been great. I do worry if it comes down to starting him for 70, 80 snaps, then I start to worry about the back end and how you can attack him with guys like Gabriel. So that is a concern. But overall, I think Lions secondary is very good. My question really is, can the defensive line get enough pressure fast enough to keep some of the longer routes from developing, and to keep Matt Ryan from being able to hit that deep ball or find that seam, find the holes in those zones too many times for Stafford to keep pace.
Yeah, let's talk about the Lions offense, because the expectation that you just mentioned is that this is going to be a game where the Lions are going to have to be able to score points. And while the Lions offense is by no means a bad one, they're not necessarily an explosive offense that's sort of built to really be like they were when Calvin Johnson was there, which was, we need a big play. Go deep, Calvin. We'll throw it up. You'll catch it. Touchdown. Good. We're good to go. They're more, Golden Tate's a really good slot possession receiver. That's really what Marvin Jones is. He's been asked to be a little bit more of a vertical threat in Detroit than he was in Cincinnati, but that's not necessarily what his MO is. Kenny Golladay is a rookie, has the size, has the speed that you would imagine if they can sort of get him developed quickly, he could be maybe that sort of vertical option that can give them a little bit more ability down the field. The Lions don't have a great run game. They look pretty good against a tough Giants run defense. I guess it's a question of, can they continue that against a relatively unproven Falcons run defense that really hasn't been tested the last couple of years, thanks in part because of their offense's ability to get points in a hurry. How do you feel like this Lions team, if they need to be able to score 30 points, are you confident they can? How else do you think they'll try to attack the Falcons defense?
Yeah, it was really funny because last year the Lions came out in the sort of classic Stafford chuck it mode. Have him throw 38, 40, 42, 45 times a game and just try and pedal to the metal, score as many points as they could. And after the first month, they were 1-3, and it became pretty obvious. Okay, if we try and we're gonna slow it down. Yards rushing on the season. Obviously, even if he's not the grinder week in, week out, wow, what a choice. He's a guy that does change the math. You have to expect he can bounce it to the outside. He can break contain. If he does get a seam and is able to hit it, he's someone who can hit the home. But the seam will be there to say it's get it out in a second. Having that run dimension really does add something. We haven't really seen them trying. Kenny Golladay, I really think he is that sort of, as a rookie, he's that size. He's the guy that you want. We're going to try and bracket him with a linebacker to see if he and it's just a pure mismatch. And when they get that matchup, he's going to be dangerous. He's going to score 2 touchdowns. And when they don't get that matchup, he's not going to catch a pass. So there's really a lot of viewing theory happening, as you say, with Calvin Johnson out. It's really, let's find who's going to be open against the Giants in the first half. It was Eric Ebron, catches, it's targeted 5 times, catches all 5 of them, 40-some yards and a touchdown. And then in the second half, there was either an adjustment from New York or the Lions just put it, or a little bit of both. Matthew Stafford threw 6 passes. So the idea that they're just going to throw it just to throw it, I don't think that they're going to do you haven't really seen them have to go into that mode. Have the weapons. I don't know if they have the protection yet, especially with Red. But Stafford's got the arm, so we'll see if they can do that.
Okay. All right. Scott, let's hear from you. What are your thoughts on these potential matchups with the Falcons and the Lions? What's your confidence level going into this Sunday?
I'm pretty confident, but it's just because I don't think the Lions linebackers and safeties can really hang with the Falcons running backs and tight ends. I think Austin Hooper, I think Tevin Coleman, I think Devontae Freeman all just in the passing game beat their matchups real easy against those linebackers and tight ends. I don't see a group of guys that can cover the running backs out the backfield. Even if they do end up putting Jalen Reeves-Maybin in, I don't see him as a guy who can cover Tevin Coleman with 2 years of experience as a rookie. I don't see Tahir Whitehead as a guy who can cover Austin Hooper out the back, or Austin Hooper coming up the seam. I think Atlanta will have a very easy way to attack this Lions defense, and it's basically just pass protect and then hit them over the middle, whether it's Sanu, whether it's Gabriel, or whether it's tight end. Hit them right over the middle.
Yeah. We got some mailbag questions from some of our listeners and viewers that specific to this game. Our first one comes from Kai Hall at Sitcom Mintro. Are you concerned the Lions with home field advantage and confidence being 2-0 will upset the Falcons? If so, why? If not, why? Ty, I'm curious. How much do you think confidence and home field advantage will sort of play into this matchup?
I'll say, if we're not talking about the fans' confidence, if we're talking about the players' confidence, right now the Lions are very confident. The defense is very confident. TJ Lang said, we've got a hell of a football team here. I think they believe in themselves. I think the defense believes in themselves. How much that's warranted yet, because I don't believe the Cardinals. I think at the end of the year we are not gonna look at either the Arizona Cardinals or the New York Giants as top caliber, high quality offenses or teams. How much that's gonna serve them, I don't know. It is very true that the Lions are much stronger at home than on the road. The crowd can be a factor. It isn't always. But between flat track and confines of home cooking, I don't know what it is, but the Lions definitely play much better at home than on the road. That's been true for a long time. So I think they're going to give him a good shot. I think they're going to give him a good game. But just in terms of talent, X's and O's, track record, the specific matchups. Again, we talk about the injuries. Jared Davis and Devon Wilson play key positions, especially when we're talking about matching up in the back seven, matching up with tight ends at backs, matching up with slot receivers. Just absolutely key to what the Lions need to do on defense in order to keep pace. So I am not confident. I haven't, the Lions haven't come out yet. So right now I don't even know if I'm taking the Lions with the spread. But if this is an L, this is certainly when the schedule comes out, you go, L. And, maybe not. Can they win? Absolutely. Might they win? Maybe. And if this is the game when Stafford brings the arm back out, we see a bunch of throws deep and it turns into a shootout and the Lions have the ball last, it could happen. But I don't see, what happened last night happen.
Well, the Falcons do kind of have that, or the Falcons line right now for that game it's Falcons -3.
Yeah. And that's with on the road, that's what you're looking at. So neutral site, touchdown better. That sounds about right to me. Again, this Lions slate, you look at this because you open hosting Arizona, at New York on Monday night, hosting Atlanta. They've got Panthers, Saints, Steelers, Packers in the next 5 games. You go, okay, it's going to be a tough sled. But after that, it goes to Cleveland, and it's kind of downhill from there. So really, managing the number of L's has always been what the first half of the season was going to be about. And if this is the first one that they take, they're probably in very good shape.
Okay. We got another question. Score prediction for the Falcons Lions. This question comes from Evan Birchfield. Scott, go first.
So I've been watching a little bit of the Lions throughout the day, getting a feel for them as a team. I do think Atlanta wins. I do think Atlanta scores a lot of points. I think it's a 34 kind of game for Atlanta. I don't see the Lions just being held to nothing. They've got a good offense. They can put up points. Atlanta's defense is going to be better, but without Beasley, the pass rush will take a small hit. I don't know how big to say how that hit is, but I do think the Falcons can create pressure on Stafford and force a turnover or two, just like they did this past week, which will cause a better overall team to win. And I think that team's the Falcons.
I will go, and if Ty wants to do his prediction for the score, I will let him go after me. I'm going to go 31-20. I think this is going to be a little one-sided early on. I think the Lions might, I think they'll be competitive. I just think at a certain point, the Falcons offense, if that's not the first quarter, it'll be the third quarter. They'll figure out the Lions and sort of put some points on in a hurry and sort of put the game away. And, I think the Lions could probably keep pace with the Falcons for about 3 quarters. But I think one of those quarters, the Falcons going to score like 14 or points in that quarter. And it's just going to bust the game wide open. So 31-20, I think, is probably the likely score.
By 10 for both teams. And I was very confident. I was pretty confident against Arizona, very confident against New York. I'm not. The Beasley injury does open the door a little bit more than it otherwise would have. Greg Robinson. And got a good preseason, had a good first game.
Well, Beasley wouldn't even line up against Greg Robinson.
No, you're right. I'm sorry.
So,
you're right.
Tack could take out Greg Robinson.
No, either way. I mean, just Rick Wagner's playing great. TJ Lang had a good game. And after a rough first week, both Travis Swanson, the center, and Graham Glasgow, the whole of the unit in terms of pass protection, about Greg Robinson does. We knew not as big a problem as they had before. Not as big a problem or Joe Dahl over to left tackle as they did during OTAs. But again, overall, I just don't think we have enough player power, and the injuries they had back. Falcons. For the Lions, maybe. I don't know if it's close early, way late. I don't know if it opens early and closes. What do you
guys? We talked about this a little bit earlier, but I guess we'll get our official statements on it. Brian, at your homie Brian on Twitter, asked, do you think Julio Jones is likely to have a big game versus the Lions? If not, who do you expect to be our biggest weapon on Sunday?
I think the biggest weapon is Taylor Gabriel. He's the one guy who hasn't gone off yet on the team. Julio Jones had a good game this week. Sanu's had 2 solid games. Devontae Freeman had his game yet this week. Cole had a good game. The one thing missing has been Taylor Gabriel. And if history has it, it's his turn. Austin Hooper had a massive game. So Taylor Gabriel getting 2 touchdowns, 150 yards, I wouldn't put it past him coming out of on the outside going against a guy like Nevin Lawson. I like Lawson, but I don't think Lawson has the speed to keep up with Gabriel. And I think Gabriel's going to burn him. And it's going to completely throw the Lions defense off because they'd be expecting Julio Jones, and they're all going to come down on an in-breaking route for Julio. Safeties are going to come down. and Gabriel.
Yeah, I think Gabriel's a good pick. I'll go with one of the running backs. I'll go with Tevin Coleman just because of the line. I think a 30 or 40-yard test. If the safety's slightly out of position, we saw this last year with the Falcons against Denver. Even with a good safety like T.J. Ward, he was just one steps out of position. But with Tevin Coleman in his sub-4, if you don't take the right angle, he can burn you for a big play. And I think we could definitely see that happen, given that the Lions are going to have their hands full with guys like Gabriel, with guys like Julio Jones, and the safeties won't be able to sort of contribute as much help to those linebackers. So there's going to be a couple of one-on-one matchups I think the Falcons will be able to exploit with their running backs. Okay, your boy J94 asks, how many times will we get to see Paul Warlow in coverage Sunday?
Hopefully.
Not enough for Falcons fans, too much for Lions fans, right, Ty?
Yeah, that sounds about right. Again, it depends on if they end up going with the 3 safety look. I think they're going to keep 2 linebackers on the field as much as possible, or even 1. So, yeah, it depends on health in the back 7 of both Davis and Wilson. But, yeah, we're probably going to see just about any of them is more than what Lions fans are going to want to see, especially given the weapons that the Falcons have.
Yeah.
Are you sure he can't just play every snap?
I mean, and I hate to go too hard on him because he seems like a good guy, beloved in Delaware and all that.
He's a great dude.
Yeah, seems like a really cool guy, and I want him to succeed. But at really no point has he shown the athleticism to be able to keep up with the guys that he needs to cover to just be out there, 40, 50 snaps for an NFL team that wants to give up fewer than 50 points to the Falcons.
Oh, yeah. Bruce Luan at Big Boy Brewski asks, weaknesses to exploit. How should we attack the Lions defense and how to stop their offense? Do you have anything else that you feel like we haven't talked about, Ty, that could be something the Falcons could exploit or something that the Lions, could exploit?
Yeah, absolutely attacking the middle of the field, drag routes, shallow crosses, anything like that where you've got guys with lateral agility coming across the middle of the field, finding holes in zones, turning it upfield. You want to do the wheel routes, those sorts of things out of the backfield, those are going to work. So absolutely you want to get the speed guys, the space guys out in space behind the defensive line. And in the holes in that back 7 between the hash marks and have them make plays after the catch. That's going to work all day long.
Yeah, the thing I will add that the Falcons need to be on their toes about, they need to tackle better. They weren't necessarily great tackling against Green Bay. They certainly weren't great tackling against Chicago. And the Lions, with Abdullah, with Theo Riddick, with Golden Tate, with Galladay, with Marvin Jones, with Ebron, with all those guys, if the Falcons don't tackle well, the Lions, even though I don't look at any of those guys with maybe the exception of Golden Tate as a guy that concerns me overly too much, but if the Falcons are going to be sloppy tackling, then, these 6-yard throws, these little dink and dunk throws, all of a sudden, they go for, instead of being 6 yards, they're 12 yards. If instead of being a 12-yard quick out, it's now 18 yards. And all of a sudden, the Lions offense starts to get a little bit more explosive because they're able to add, 4 or 5 yards here after and whatnot. And they have guys that are fast. And if you miss in the open field, Amir Abdullah is just as fast as anybody the Falcons have on their team. And it's one of those things where if you're not taking the right, not sure in your tackling, he can burn you, as we saw him do against the Giants a couple of times. So I think if the Falcons are going to stop the Lions offense, I don't think they need to sort of lose any sleep over anybody, with maybe the exception of Tate. If they are going to be sloppy, it's to really sort of play to the strength of the Lions. Okay. Before we get to the mailbag, We do a thing in the show, Ty, where we call out somebody, someone who's grinding our gears or something like that. I try not to call out players. I'm on Twitter, and I'm sitting there reading people say this about your team, and it wasn't as bad as last week. But in one Thursday night game, all I'm seeing is people tweeting about Kareem Hunt, and I'm like, guys, this is the first game of the season. Little E-Champion preview right now. I'll tweet that, and my fantasy team did this, but it's like one tweet out of like 100. Like just keep the list low. That's all I was saying.
I'm with Eric. The fantasy football followers. Oh my God, Brandon Marshall, you didn't get me.
The linebacker has people in his mentions. This last seeing Brandon, he's been doing this for years. The only player I would recommend tweeting at.
So this leads. But free.
So that's Twitter is an amazing place, and then of course there's poor Jerry Sandusky.
Yes. Oh, I feel so sorry for Jerry Sandusky. And it's a tough. Like he's up there in the age, like in the 50s, 60s. So for like 90% of his life, no problems with that name, Jerry Sandusky. The last couple of years.
I've never heard two announcers just openly rooting for the Green Bay Packers to win a game. Like, openly rooting. They were like, oh, 15 points. Or no, they're down by, what was it, 20 points at that time, or 22 points at that time. They're down by 22 points, and there was like 4 minutes left. They're like, yeah, they just got to score a touchdown here and get the 2-point conversion. You're just like, dude, they lost. Accept the L. Accept the L. Just sometimes you got to be like, oh, man, I lost. They kept bringing up Super Bowl, and come on, I see 17. I realize the Super Bowl second game of the season. It's going to be the team is up, and you can't up that same Super Bowl. It's off those fans. It's going to lose people that are like, dude, y'all suck, and they're going to mute their TVs and not give a shit about what. So tired.
Just people know that if
He won the Super Bowl. He was great when he won those Super Bowls.
He's not that great. Even with the seasons, even with the draft, where Eli Manning, and that's great. Absolutely, look at other quarterbacks who started for years in that Eli's been in the league. So, but my mentions just dumpster players since then. 1 point thread on Reddit, and so all those people were then coming over to my and just watch some football. Just press play.
Well, Ty, that is the dumpster stuff fire that is. Okay. Well, we appreciate you, Ty. You sticking it out with and to your team, but I don't really mean it. So, that's what I'll say. Good luck season.
Likewise. Let's not happy the last time our
Scott will keep this thing going, and we got a couple other mailbag questions that we want to get to. And let's start off with Tyrell Powell at Struggle Proof. Yes, with the first 2 games of book, what guys so far?
Just the pass rush. I've never seen it be this good, this fast. Not even in 2007. They had Abraham, Grady Jackson, and Coleman. Like, just the best pass rush I've seen in years.
Yeah, that's been my main takeaway. The pass rush being good. It hasn't reached dominant levels like we all want it to be, but I think as Tack starts to mature, as once Vic B's back, how he's out, and
he was one in the rotation. I'd have Shelby and Crawford just split whatever snaps Upshaw's going to see. Those guys can really play the same role that Upshaw does. But with that kind of a different piece there, different. So I probably kind of split snaps between Andre Campbell, technically Brooks Reed, and just whoever is the freshest on the field at all.
Yeah. For that, leaves, the first 40 snaps that he'll normally play per game. And, I think they'll probably keep Jared and Poe about the same. So probably, the guys that benefit the most are probably Tack and Shelby from those two injuries in the immediate future in terms of seeing a significant increase in their opportunities. Evan Birchfield asks, percentage chance we see Freeney in a Falcons uniform this season?
I'd have to see what goes on with Vic Beasley's injury, but right now I'm going to say 25%. I don't think the ship is completely sailed. I think if the Falcons lost like Brooks Reed this week for a couple weeks, they'd be like, all right, well, let's just sign for a rough patch, and then we'll cut him at the end of it. He knows what the plan is. Like, that's the thing. But I could also see them just elevating JT Jones instead.
Yeah, I think we would have to see another injury, which is possible. So it's that the percentage of that is 0, but probably I wouldn't necessarily think it's much higher than 20%. So I'll split the difference in percent. I don't think in the plan. I think you would have to either see the patch just completely evaporate over the next month. If I really went that way, because I do think they like the issue. The reason why Freeney has not the Falcons have had no intention of signing him, despite various quotes of the Falcons seemingly leaving the door open for that. The problem is Freeney's role is a nickel only player, and that's the role that they envision Tack McKinley. And until we don't something that the injury guy said,
or maybe even Bruce Irvin. When Bruce Irvin eight sacks a year and playing solid, strong linebacker outside, and that might be his truth. So I like what I'm seeing from Devondre Campbell, and I think he could be extremely good.
Yeah, I think upside as a strong side linebacker. I think those are good comparisons. I think what Campbell is going to be similar to those two guys is not necessarily the best player on a good defense, but a good player on a good defense. I think that's really sort of where his potential lies. I don't think we're going to look at Devondre Campbell and be like, oh man, Devondre Campbell, he's amazing. You got to block that guy and around that guy. I think he's going to be that type of player, but defense, which is what the Falcons does, getting towards. We can fight far, but I think we're certainly working towards that, and I think Campbell's also working towards that as well. So, if we're going on, if you want a more specific number, if we're going on a 10-point scale, if 5 is being a solid average, I think Campbell could potentially be 7.5 at strong side linebacker, which may seem low to some people, but will be an 8 or a 9. So, Andy at Falcons, do you think will make the playoffs from the NFC South?
I'm gonna be hot to take here and say no. I think only Winston throw too many interceptions. Smith's defense be too.
Okay. For me, I could see making it from the NFC South. I wouldn't necessarily bet on it, but looking around the rest of the NFC, I think I think you're looking at Dallas and right now, if east of the South, I think you would put the Falcons. If
I wouldn't be. Just look at the AFC South. The AFC South isn't good. Then they get the NFC East, where I don't think the Giants are that good this year, and I don't think that they played the Redskins, but I don't think the Eagles are that good either. So, I mean, I don't really know if there is a team that can have a schedule that's comparably. And the Rams always play the Seahawks tough. So you could have a team that is matched from 10-6 at the end of the year, and people go, wait, Jared Goff is actually good? Because Sean McVay does that to quarterbacks.
I could see the Rams being 8-8. Having a winning season be pretty tough in their offensive limitations, but you never know. We'll see how there will be certain games offensively where they'll be able to do their thing because I think McVay is a good schemer and whatnot. But at the end of the day, I think Jared Goff is going to golf, so I can't really put them as a win. I think it's certainly possible, if not, if hopefully it blossoms into a nice little paycheck in January. Evan Birchfield asked, I read the article of Horn. What did you think of it, Aaron? It was a perfectly good article explaining why the Falcons play a train horn. I don't necessarily understand.
I think he's asking what you think about the train horn.
Oh, okay. It's like, why do you care what I thought about Scott's article? I didn't understand.
Yeah, no, I think he's asking what you think about the train horn.
I actually didn't even notice it watching the game live. Like, I didn't notice it, and then I saw people were talking about it, and I was like, oh, what are they talking about? I don't have a problem with it. I'm a big fan of the Viking horn. I know some people hate it. Probably most of them live in Wisconsin, Illinois, or Michigan. But I love that Viking horn. So, it's great. Go for it. It beats better than like hearing a Falcon or something after they.
But when you think about it, Atlanta is a railroad city. That's how they play the train horn. I love it. I think it ties.
All right. Luke at the Dirty Bird 1988. Thoughts on the four wide receiver formations? Does it limit the offense? I think it's the first time I've seen it since Cutter era.
I think you might be right. They used it very sparingly in the Cutter era, or since the Cutter era. I think it will be a good fit long-term season. See that formation out there. I hope we see it's the 3 receiver, 1 tight end, but they're lined up as if they're wide receivers, as if they're 4 wide. Basically, what they used to do with Tony Gonzalez. I want to see them do that with Austin Hooper in the role that Tony Gonzalez slot, like the way that teams should be using Jimmy Graham. So, as long as the Falcons are doing something along those lines, I'm perfectly cool with it.
Yeah, like I think I saw the number where the Falcons only used 4 wide receivers 10 times last year, and they used it 3 times against Green Bay. So I think that was specifically designed to exploit the Packers' nitro package, their 3 safety look, because they knew that it would be able to get a one-on-one matchup between wide receiver and safety, which with our 4 wide receivers is very advantageous for the Falcons offense. I think if you assume, when we talked about this with Ty, if the Lions sort of compensate for their linebacker injuries with more 3 safety looks, then I think you will be a part of the offense. I don't think this will be something that's going to be common every week, but I certainly think the Falcons will pick and choose some spots and some opportunities to create some mismatches, particularly with teams that might be a little bit less fleet of foot and might be a little bit more prone to some 3 safety looks where that formation where you could potentially have a Taylor Gabriel or Sanu or Justin Hardy, obviously not a Julio Jones, nobody's that crazy, but where one of those 3 guys is matched up with the safety. And, I think it will certainly benefit the Falcons. So I'm in favor of it. I don't agree that it limits the offense at all. It's not something that they use a ton. Again, it was only 3 plays out of 15. So it's not necessarily something that you're going to see a ton. But yeah, I think it's something that's definitely a new wrinkle that Sark's adding to the offense that really was missing last year, and I think will benefit the team.
And on 2 of those 3 plays, half of the time, or on 2 of those 3 plays, it went to that 4th wide receiver, whether it was Hardy or Gabriel, and they both caught the ball each time. So,
yeah. Yeah. Ooh, lost my place. Luke at the Dirty Board 1998. Who should I start this week on my fantasy team? The GOAT, Sanu, or Marvin Jones?
So my theory on that is never start a guy on your fantasy team when he's going against your home team. If you take the L, you take the L, but it's bad juju to start a guy against your favorite team. Unless he's a monster player and he's not playing for the Saints. So don't play Marvin Jones against your team. You got him for 15 more weeks, so use him on those weeks. Don't play Jimmy Graham against the Falcons, but you got him for 15 more weeks if you got Jimmy Graham. I'm personally sitting Marvin Jones this week.
I do not believe in that philosophy at all, Scott. I will play the heck out of it against the Falcons if I think it's going to get me, 10 or 12 fantasy points. To do it, but I'm just like, I'll sit back and be like, hey, whether I play this guy or not doesn't mean he's going to not beat, Deji Olatoye.
I'm starting Sammy Watkins over Marvin Jones. So
now, that being that, definitely puts in it. It's a better matchup. Jones is probably going to be matched up with Trufant and Alford quite a bit. He won't get shut down by any means, but I think it's going to be difficult for him to sort of get the sort of numbers that you're probably looking for in your fantasy team, and you be able to score a touchdown. However, and we talked about this earlier with the matchup he's faced, whoever the Lions put in the slot, whether it's Quandre Diggs, whether it's DJ Hayden, catches 80, 78 plus yards. So, if those, 7 or 8 fantasy points is what you're looking for, I think Sanu is definitely more likely to provide it this week than Marvin Jones is. All right. Evan Birchfield asks, of the 0-2 teams, who, if any, do you think the playoffs? I got to look at the standings.
None of them will make the playoffs. I'm just looking here. If we break down all the 0-2 teams, you got the Saints, you've got the NFL, you got the Chargers, you got the Giants, you got the Bears, the Browns. Like, I'm not seeing a team here where I'm like, oh, this team's good. This team's going to be able to come in. One team who might make the playoffs is the Giants. But even then, I don't trust them to do anything. But none of the teams are good.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm looking at who's out of those 0-2 teams, I would say who's the best team. I would probably say the Chargers, but that in that division, starting 0-2 is basically like your season. Like, it's just going to be too hard to climb out of the cellar in that division. The Giants have a shot just because no one has really run away with the NFC East yet. And if you're looking other than the Chargers, I think they are probably the most balanced team that looks like a playoff team. So I think, they could dig themselves out, but it's really just depending on Odell Beckham coming back and being Odell Beckham in that defense, being one of the top 5 defenses in the league, which they did not look like they were against the Lions last night. So unless those things happen, yeah, I'm with Scott. I don't think anybody, but if you're looking for betting advice and you're like, okay, the odds are never going to be better than what they are now starting 0-2, since it's 5% of the time teams start 0-2 and make the playoffs or something like that, 5% of 0-2 teams, then I would probably, flip a coin between the Chargers and the Giants, put some money, put, I don't know, $20 down, see maybe that turns into $200 by the end of the year. At Vil Terenius, that Terenius on Twitter, is Sark a bust? And have you seen Kyle? Has he said anything about us? He capitalizes. That's why I said it like that. Like how he misses the team, the times we had. I mean, we were the couple.
Yeah. Sark's not a bust. Sark's good. I haven't seen Kyle. I haven't wanted to watch a team without a quarterback play football. Watching versus 11 is never fun. And Brian Hoyer blows. So, yeah, no, I'm not going to watch the 49ers.
There you go. Yeah, Sark is not a bust. Maybe they will start constructing a bust of him out in front of the stadium if he puts up another 30-plus point game this week against the Lions with the Falcons. I miss the times we had with Kyle. I certainly do. As long as Sark keeps doing his job, I won't miss them too much. But I haven't heard anything. He hasn't been texting friends and whatnot. So we'll see what happens with that relationship if we can sort of end on good terms. I don't know. Anyway, let's get to the end of the show. We got a couple of questions from Low-Key Confucius at Jalen Muhammad on Twitter. He asked, why do people still bash Kyle Shanahan? Did Sark inspire more confidence in you all as he did in me?
So we bash Kyle Shanahan because Sarkisian's already shown against the Packers the game plan that Shanahan probably should have used against the Patriots, which was run the fucking ball with Devontae Freeman. And did Sark inspire more confidence? Yes, because he ran the ball with the hot hand on the day. Devontae Freeman had the hot hand. He ran the ball with Devontae Freeman. Freeman gained another 40 yards in the second half. Game over. Falcons win by 11. We all would have taken that result against the damn Patriots.
There you go. Look, I don't bash Kyle Shanahan. It's not my MO. So, Scott would be able to provide the answer to that. And yes, Sark did inspire a lot more confidence in me this week, given that he did his job. He did a good job this past week. I don't think he did a great job in week one. I don't think he did a bad job in week one, but it didn't feel like the Falcon team that I had grown to respect and cheer for over the last couple of years. And so I'm glad to see the team get back on track, and glad that storyline can sort of be put to bed, and we're not still talking about that in week 4. I know I got a couple of clicks and a couple of retweets from that storyline, but it was not something I enjoyed talking about because, contrary to popular opinion, I do kind of like it just a little bit. All right, our next question from Jalen Muhammad is, what stipulations does Matt have to do to be a Hall of Fame quarterback? When should we start drafting the next quarterback? It's a weird combination of a question.
All right, so for Matt Ryan to be a Hall of Fame quarterback, he basically has to put up like 4,000 yards a year from now until his retirement, and probably 30 touchdowns each year from now until his retirement, and keep his interceptions under 12. That way they're in that kind of Drew Breesy kind of range. And the Falcons probably have to win 2 Super Bowls for him to get in there. Now, when should we draft the next quarterback? Probably around the time Matt Ryan hits age 36. Draft a guy, have him sit for a year or 2, and then when Ryan retires at 37, 38, that's when you bring him in. So we probably have 6, 7 more years of Matt Ryan. Let's enjoy him while we got him.
Okay. I think the 2 things he'll need. I think it's going to be hard for him to get on numbers. I think it's one of those things where like there have been other quarterbacks that didn't win Super Bowls, that got Dan Marino's a prominent one, but I don't think anybody historically is going to be like, that Matt Ryan and Dan Marino were peas in the same pod. I think Matt Ryan, in order to get to the Hall of Fame, I think he needs to do one of 2 things. I think he needs to win another MVP, or he needs to win a Super Bowl. I don't think he needs to win 2 Super Bowls. I think if he gets 1 Super Bowl, he's in the Hall of Fame. Yeah. So when should we start drafting the next quarterback? Matt Ryan's going to get an extension after this season, it's going to basically be another 4-year contract before the Falcons either have to redo it, give him more money, tear it up, get rid of him, or whatever. So I think because of that, I think drafting a quarterback next year makes a lot of sense. You get that guy for 4 years. Take that guy in the third, fourth round if there's a guy worthy of it. We know recent history has suggested that that's not always the case. Yeah, I think drafting a guy next year, giving that guy some time to sort of develop, potentially 4 years in the event that Matt Ryan decides he wants to fall off of a cliff by 2021 or whatever. You have that guy now with 4 years of developmental time. Or you can, wait another year. If that guy doesn't work out, then you can draft a guy in 2018 or 2019 or whatever. I'd be all for drafting a quarterback with the idea that we're going to try to Jimmy Garoppolo him and see what we have with him in a couple of years. The chances are, even if you did draft the guy, he's not going to turn out to be Jimmy Garoppolo. So it's probably likely that he's going to be Ryan Nassib instead. It's probably not going to work out for you, but why not? All right, our last question comes from Jalen. It is, who of our group of young talent do you think gets the axe in 2 years?
If I had to guess anybody, and I know I'm going to get shit on this, but I'd guess Ricardo Allen. And it's not because the Falcons wouldn't want to keep him. It's not because he sucks. It's because I think they're grooming KZ to eventually replace him with the thought that he's going to get a massive contract from someone else to be that new Earl Thomas for whoever he would leave to go to. I like Ricardo Allen. I think him moving to safety was probably saved his career. Actually, I know it saved his career, but if you're talking in 2 years, that's after this year, after next year, that's when he's going to be an unrestricted free agent. The Falcons won't have a way to keep him. I don't see them franchising a safety. I mean, I love Rico, but if Rico says I can get money for Tampa.
I think that's a good pick. As soon as possible, because you don't necessarily need to make that immediate upgrade because Allen's been so solid. But yeah, it's probably unlikely, assuming KZ's development goes fine over the next 2 years, that they will offer Allen a lucrative second contract. I think looking at some of the guys that are going to be free. The 20